four pillars that support our admission policy comprise acknowledging merit over anything else, complete transparency, unhindered access to one and all being the other two. Last but not the least, meeting the expectations of the corporate to which we serve.
The current year, the placement has been good. Very big companies, let's say TCS, HCL, Bajaj, you name it, all the leading companies have been visiting us. More than 50% is over by now. And
At B schools in the country, and within the top 20 in overall institutions, which includes the universities and the IIMs and all the government institutions.
BIMTech has created many touch.
Good evening, everybody. Kindly take your seats. A warm welcome to all of you to this roundtable on engaging the 21st century workforce, presented by BIMTech in association with the National HRD Network and our knowledge partner Deloitte. I am Manashi Chaudhary, Associate Professor with BIMTech, and I'm your anchor for this evening. Before we proceed, I have a small request to make. Kindly put your mobile phones onto silent mode. Thank you. On behalf of the organizers, we would like to thank each one of you for this overwhelming response to this evening event. We would also like to thank NDTV Prime for coming on board with us as our TV partner for this event. Over the last 3 years, we've conducted 15 roundtables across various locations with different sub-themes and received tremendous response from the HR fraternity in all the locations. While last year's deliberations have been compiled and placed on your tables for your ready reference, we are back again this year in collaboration with our partners and panelists with another series of discussion on the theme, Engaging the 21st Century Workforce. The world's top performing organizations understand that employee engagement is a force that drives business outcomes. Research shows that engaged employees are more productive, profitable, customer-focused, and more likely to withstand temptations to leave the organization. Employee engagement has become a strategic approach supported by tactics for driving improvement and organizational change. I would now like to invite Dr. H. Chaturvedi, Director, Birla Institute of Management Technology, to deliver the welcome note. With a master's degree in commerce and doctorate in business management from Agra University, Dr. Chaturvedi has more than 36 years of experience in teaching, research, and administration. As a former director with the All India Council for Technical Education, he has been associated with the formulation of policies, planning, regulation, and control of management education, as well as other disciplines under technical education. Dr. Chaturvedi is a founder member and the alternate president of the Education Promotion Society of India, a national platform for eminent educationists and education service providers. He is also president of the Alumni Association of Agra University and Ranganathan Society for Social Welfare and Library Development, Uttar Pradesh. Over to you, sir.
Good evening. It is a matter of great pleasure that in this HR roundtable presented by BIMTech in association with the National HRD Network, Deloitte, and NDTV Prime, we have amidst us some of the leading thought leaders from the Indian business who have been actively involved in nurturing and engaging talent. Their views and experiences in today's HR roundtable will be extremely relevant since they represent a wide spectrum of leadership in diverse areas. On behalf of BIMTech and our co-organizers, I have great pleasure in welcoming the distinguished panelists in the HR roundtable and all those stalwarts of the industry who are part of today's deliberations. Our eminent speakers for the day, in alphabetical order, include Mr. L. Prabhakar, VP HR, Agribusiness Division ITC Limited, Mr. Narendra Kothari, CMD, NMDC Limited, Ms. Rachana Mukherjee, Chief HR Officer, Schneider Electric India, Mr. S.V. Nathan, Director Talent, Deloitte Consulting India Private Limited, and Ms. Uma Devagupta Pu, Director HR, Synode, Asia Pacific and MEA region. They are known in the industry for their dedicated practice. I welcome them all as distinguished speakers in this round table and request you to welcome them with a big applause. The current and future talent pool is changing, as is today's business environment, and so the business imperative to adapt and develop the workplace has never been greater. What are the key features of the 21st century workforce? Its challenges and opportunities. What should business do to remain highly productive and competitive amidst tough trading conditions and a rapidly changing marketplace? In today's HR Roundtable, we are going to discuss the challenges the quest for workforce capability presents. Given the complexities and continuous disruptions in the global economy, it is no surprise that the challenge of building global workforce capability is relevant for all stakeholders of business. The term workforce capability for us refers to an organization's ability to accomplish its work processes through the knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies of its people. Capabilities are measurable characteristics of an individual related to work success. They may include the ability to build and sustain relationships with the clients, to innovate and transition to new technologies, to develop new products and work processes, and to meet changing business market and regulatory demands. Today, business leaders understand the strategic significance of workforce capability. Capability development places importance on people and their capacity to perform at high levels in a rapidly changing working environment. Developing skills and knowledge is just one aspect of capability development. Being able to apply those skills in different contexts with confidence differentiates skills and capability. Creating capability is about moving away from segmented activities of development to holistic activities that have more meaning and purpose. In their article published as early as 2001, Farrell and Patterson wrote, "Progression in capability cannot be made in simple incremental steps. Like riding a bicycle, you learn by concentrating on simple aspects, pedaling or steering. Then quite suddenly, you get the hang of it. You practice some more in different circumstances or with different equipment and gradually become more capable. Increasingly, you can handle more variables and different challenges with a broader understanding. Thus, the necessity of abilities being exercised together and with coherence in appropriate context becomes obvious and imperative. In a world where employee retention and workforce capability are significant indicators of business success, we need to find the reason for the capability gap. First, many organizations are looking in the wrong place, believing they can fill their capability gap by hiring the right person in their current markets. Even if companies can identify the right people, they must then attract them, compete with others to hire them, and train them further once they are on the job. Second, it takes many years to develop deep skills within the workforce. Third, many companies have not built development programs that create capabilities in a continuous way. Robust capabilities are not built through intermittent training, but through continuous education, experience, exposure, and the right environment. At an organizational level, the capability framework can help identify the capabilities required for the business now and into the future. Changing priorities and gaps in learning and development programs, a clear basis for workforce and succession planning, consistent selection criteria, and a clearer understanding of career progression. In the coming years, organizations should tap into external talent networks, better share expertise, build skills internally, and create a supply chain of skills to build the capabilities they need now and into the future. Companies that succeed in building a global skill supply chain will be positioned to excel in innovation and performance. Given the current economic challenges, employers are likely to put a premium on having fully engaged employee. A majority of employees want work that is challenging, satisfying, and where there are opportunities for learning and development. While factors such as competitive pay might affect the decisions that employees make about working for a particular company, factors such as opportunities for learning and development are related to employees expressing a willingness to go the extra mile at work. Most talented people prefer an organization whose work engages their interest and deserves their passion. Their level of engagement and motivation are subject to constant fluctuation in response to micro signals, small indications of whether the company is committed to their growth, whether it really believes in serving a higher purpose, what kinds of behavior are rewarded, how much can be learned from working there, and more. The need for self-improvement is deeply satisfying to people of many skills, levels, and positions, and becoming a platform for talent can help an organization in terms of attracting and retaining highly skilled people. Friends, today, before I conclude, I would like to just draw your attention. Today has a historical importance. 100 years back on the same day, 9th January 1915, father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, came back from Africa to India. His life journey in the freedom movement started on this day. This day is very important, and when Gandhiji came to India and went to Kumbh at Haridwar, thousands of people thronged to meet him because there was a lot of curiosity about a man who fought against the racial regime of South Africa, and 22 years he has made a history. Very eminent freedom fighter Gokhale has said about Gandhiji that he is the man who can convert ordinary people into martyrs and heroes. So I find Mahatma Gandhi a great leader who could convert millions of people, ordinary people, farmers, teachers, lawyers, students, as freedom fighters, leaders of the nation, those who later shaped the destiny of this country. Whatever we have today, we have our gratitude to those freedom fighters. So I think this is the very opportune time today to think about workman capability in coming decade when India is going to implement Make in India slogan of our Prime Minister. I think the slogan will remain slogan unless we are able to change the fortunes and skills and capabilities of the millions of workmen and employees in this country. Thank you.
You, sir. This session will bring out various perspectives on workforce capability with special reference to the 21st century workforce. A holistic model for capability development supports a workforce to respond quickly, effectively, and innovatively to a constantly changing environment and to customer needs. Such a model, based on the life-based learning philosophy, recognizes that the knowledge, skills, and attributes of individuals and teams are acquired not only at work, but also external to the work environment. What we do outside of work informs what we do at work. An effective capability development model will therefore provide a wide range of flexible, diverse, adaptive, and personalized learning and development options, ensuring that teams and individuals meet business visions and goals. So, what advice do our panelists have for developing workforce capability and designing engagement initiatives, bearing in mind the peculiarities of the 21st century workforce? To discuss this at length, I take the opportunity to invite on stage our moderator for the session, Mr. S.V. Nathan. A leader, mentor, and advocate of ethical leadership and growing future leaders through coaching, Mr. Nathan leads talent for the India region of the Deloitte US firms. He has 30 years of experience in HR management across diverse industries, including manufacturing, services, telecom, and IT. He has vast experience in building and leading high-performance teams in both multinational and Indian organizations, and serving as a trusted business advisor focused on transforming talent as a strategic growth enabler. With bachelor's in mathematics and post-graduation from XLRI, Mr. Nathan is a behavioral specialist in sensitivity training and has been conferred several awards and honors. He also serves on the board of the National HRD Network as its National Secretary. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. It's a wonderful evening. I see a lot of friends in the midst, and I really want to take the opportunity of thanking the organizers. BIMTech has been doing a yeoman's work along with NHRD, and in taking a lot of research and having people such as yourselves come in and spend an evening and try to understand what the research means and so on. But what we found even more interesting about this was the fact that you got to have a more engaged audience. And therefore, we'll try to do as much as possible to get the best of us, be with you, and share with you the knowledge of over 100 years that they have put together, maybe even more. I will take but a few minutes, and again, I want to thank the organizers that this is being done on a Friday and not a Monday. The reason is I understand that most heart attacks happen only on a Monday. So, thank you very much. There's an interesting story. 1752. If you look at the month of September 1752, you will see that there are 11 days which are missing from that calendar. So, you will find that this is during the time when England shifted from the Roman calendar to the Gregorian calendar. The Roman calendar was longer than the Gregorian calendar. So the King of England, he went up and he said, 11 days be wiped off. We've got to integrate. We've got to have just one. And therefore, from the 2nd, if you look at 1st of September, 2nd of September, you then jump to the 14th of September. Workers worked 11 days less that month, but got paid for in full, because that's what the king ordered. So that's the concept of the paid leave, by the way. In the Roman calendar, April was the first day of the year. By the way, many organizations still start their fiscal years on the 1st of April. In the Gregorian, it was the 1st of January. of the new year. But that's the way it starts. And we all wish each other. By the way, I must say that many people did not give up this idea that it's going to be the 1st of April. So they would still get up on the 1st of April and say, wish you a very, very happy new year. The king was rather annoyed. And so he issued a dictum that anybody who celebrated on the 1st of April would be called a fool. And that's the reason why on 1st of April, we call it a Fool's Day. So that's the reason why I have a April Fool's Day that day. The challenges today are not very, very different. The king had the courage and the sagacity to draw a line, and which he said is important, because if you're wanting two things to merge, and if you have to take the decision, you have to take the decision. People then, people now. Problems then, problems now. What changes are we willing to make? What choices are we willing to exert? Let's come back to the workforce capability. And I want to take this at 3 levels. First one, at a global level. Corporations now compete globally for the scarce technical and professional skills. Everybody knows this. The recent global report of Deloitte, Josh Bersin, says, while 75% of the survey participants rate workforce capability as an urgent or an important challenge, only 15% believe that they are ready today to address it. As we begin 2015, global organizations have left the recession era. Sluggishness has given way to expansion. Retrenchment has been replaced by investments. The need for caution has been superseded by the need for all of us to take some action. Enter the 21st century. Innovation, technology, coupled with the ability to work remotely will open the door for talent, just not outside their immediate physical reach for opportunities. And therefore, in order to attract and retain people, what changes do we need to make? The ability to then have work done around the clock will become an increasing reality in many businesses. By the way, if you did not know this, the brain is more active in the evening than in the morning. So again, be well, because we're going to be taking you through a very interesting session back to where I have one more point to make. In the remaining part of the decade, it is expected that we'll have 100 million jobs would become extinct. Why will they become extinct? They'll become extinct because of automation and artificial intelligence and machine learning. So we're going to have 1 million jobs just vanish. On the other hand, we're going to have new jobs that are going to get created, demanded by how we manage this complexity. Whether the number of new jobs will arise and keep pace with the ones that will go extinct is not predicted today, and therefore the subject of workforce capability is important. Constitution of the workforce in a decade will change significantly. 70% of the workforce will be our young people, the millennials. Most economies, older generations will extend their workforce lives and will be productively invested. Their motivation and approach to work will be significantly different from those of the millennials, as we all very well know. I'm having to deal with my children who are in their early 20s, and it's not easy. The two trends are producing the most multi-generational workforce that we have had in the history of India. By the way, what I'd like to do is take you through a very short research that Deloitte has done. And with this, let me take you on to the very first slide. Is it possible for us to show the slides, please? Are we there? Okay. So this is the research, one of the largest studies that we have ever done anywhere in the world. Over 2,500 organizations, businesses, HR leaders covering the length and breadth of. And we have a key findings. The key findings, we put that in 5 boxes. One is to do with leadership. The other one is, where is the 21st century and how is it getting engaged? We are looking at the capabilities of people who are in the HR function. And the result shows that we are kind of lagging behind, so what have we got to do? Technology, analytics, and then you have an employee who's rather overwhelmed. Last but not the least, this is the one that we are going to be speaking about today, is the skills gap and how do you raise capability in our workforce. The trends that we looked at fall largely in three buckets. One is to do with lead and develop. How do you attract and how do you engage your workforce? Last but not the least, how do you transform and invent? So if you take each one of these, you will find that lead and develop is about leadership at every level of an organization. Corporate learning is getting redefined. By the way, even as I'm speaking, many of you would have started to look at what are we doing in our own organizations. Performance management is undergoing a big transformation. And then you're looking at this workforce capability. So when you look at lead and develop, this is one of those very important trends that we are seeing. And attract and retain, and I don't want to go through each one of those. These are the challenges that we are faced with today, but these are the ones which are very interesting, very important. The trends report also show you're going to be looking at transforming and inventing. How do we reskill the HR function in itself, implement talent analytics, which is again a very big area of focus. How do we race to the highest end of technology on the cloud? How do we globalize? And therefore, what are the 5 big global trends? And if you look at what are the top trends, you're looking at leadership. And the 5th one on the one that you have out here is the one that we're going to be discussing. Each one that you had, of the first 4, have been discussed threadbare in the other cities, whether you take Delhi, Bombay, and other cities. Each one of those we have had these kinds of discussions, of course, very many more. But the one that we are going to be talking about today is the one which is going to focus on that you see as the 5th, which is very important, which is how do you build the capabilities in an organization. This is a very interesting topic. What I'm about to do is invite members of the panel to kindly join me on stage. So will all the panel members kindly rise and join me here? So we would have, we have Mr. Narendra Kothari, we would have Mr. Prabhakar, we have Ms. Rachna, and of course, Uma. So can you please join us on stage? One of the things that we want to do today is allow for each one of the panelists to speak for about 5-7 minutes on their chosen subject. This is something that I'm going to introduce. And we are hoping to hear from them, their perspective on a question. Even as I start, I want to speak about the speakers and introduce them. And let me take the opportunity of introducing my friend, Mr. Prabhakar. So he is on my extreme left. Prabhakar is the Vice President of Human Resources at the Agri-Business Division of ITC and is a member of the Management Committee of that business, an alumnus of Surathkal. He's also from XLRI. He has been associated with ITC for over 19 years in different capacities across different businesses. He's also worked in TVS Motors for 4 years. He's built upon his school and college level interest in giving back
to the society, focusing on social responsibilities. He's keen on strengthening the HR and management function, as also the sustainability movement. He's been engaged very actively with NHRD, India's leading body for HR professionals, till 2007 in different capacities, and was the national treasurer from 2011-2013. He is now the regional president South for NHRD. He was co-opted member of the executive committee of Hydrabad Management Association for 2012 and 13, associated as the CEO Forum on Human Rights under the aegis of Global Compact, Network India, etc. But I'm going to tell you a few things about Prabhakar that people may not know as part of his rich biodata. Number one, his personal philosophy. His personal philosophy is be simple and keep it simple. Be simple and keep simple. You would note that even as many of us are jacketed and tied, he is a person who is always this way. I've never seen Prabhakar in a jacket. I'm hoping one day that he is in my fond memories. One time I even asked him, I said, Prabhakar, is it possible to show you a marriage photograph? I'm hoping that at least there, I would see you in a suit. He enjoys making a difference to people. He connects with them, he mentors them, and he wants to see change that they can experience in themselves. The one thing that nobody knows about Prabhakar is the fact that he's a fun-loving guy. By the way, I didn't know this about you, but I understand that if you get some music and some dance and you would find that Prabhakar would have his dancing shoes on and he would be the last man standing on the floor. So Prabhakar, thank you for joining us. I have a question for you, Prabhakar. Prabhakar, workforce transformation happens in a deliberate way for a strategic reason. Often, HR leaders believe they are responsible for leading the transformation. And we believe that we take great pride in owning this. Does this reside with the HR leader, or does it reside with the business leaders, or is this a matter of co-creation? What has been your transformational journey of getting a productive, sharper focus and an approach to workforce capability building? Over to you, Prabhakar.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Nathan, for those kind words. Typically, a question like that can get a very crisp and short response. It depends. Whether it's with HR or with CEO. Yes, it depends, but from my own experience, I've seen it depends on some very, very specific dimensions and aspects. And these are things that I've experienced in my own tenure in different companies. And what I mean by it depends is who drives it? Who drives the process of co-creation? Does the CEO drive the process or the HR drives the process? Three specific aspects. It depends on the context. And when I'm looking at context, I'm including competitiveness, capabilities, or even customer. To give you a very quick this thing, if the context is, I've had a major IR problem in the business or in the organization, and I have to strengthen the whole workforce capability related to, let's say, employee contribution or employee involvement. Obviously, there the primary driver for co-creation would be HR. But if it's a context where I'm launching a new product or a new category or a merger and acquisition, the primary responsibility for co-creation would be the CEO. So that's one dimension. The second dimension is really the time horizon. The co-creation shifts gear towards the CEO when we are looking at a longer time horizon. And typically in ITC, we look at what we call as a 3-horizon strategy, Horizon 1, 2, and 3. Horizon 1 would be between now and 3 years. Horizon 2 would be 3 to 7 years. And Horizon 3 would be 7 years and beyond. The more distant the horizon, the ownership and the lead for co-creation rests with the CEO. The more immediate it is it flows back to HR in terms of taking the lead for co-creation. The last dimension really is in terms of what I call the execution hierarchy or execution criticality. If I have to build the workforce capability at senior levels, then the co-creation gets driven more by the CEOs. But if I'm looking at workforce capability creation at probably the frontline level, HR would take the lead in terms of the co-creation. But just one aspect on the execution hierarchy, many a times it's not very, very strict definition of hierarchy. It could be possible, and I'm just trying to visualize the current scenario of e-commerce boom that's happening in the country. My own view is the front line, all of us experience online. We also have an experience when the courier boy comes and delivers the package to us. Now that particular person might be the lowest person in the hierarchy, may not even be part of the organization. But in my view, for companies like that, that's a very, very critical segment in terms of creating the right experience. So for a situation like that, for a hierarchy like that, again, the co-creation owners would probably have to shift gears and move higher in the organization. So that would be my quick take at this point of time.
Prabhakar, thank you. What I would do is, if you have questions, kindly note them down. There is a time and space for us to ask questions. We will come back to Prabhakar in a while. I now have the honor of introducing Rachna Mukherjee. Rachna. Rachna is currently the Chief Human Resources Officer of Schneider Electric India. Rachna has worked extensively in the areas of talent acquisition, management, career succession planning, organizational capability, change management, leadership, employee engagement, compensation, organizational design. She's also had a rich experience in managing HR operations, which enhances her ability to evolve and implement long-term transformational initiatives. Prior to joining Schneider, she was a Vice President HR at Aircel Limited. She has managed HR for the organization through its exponential growth phase of doubling the employee base in a very short span of time. Rachna has played key strategic HR roles in organizations such as Microsoft, IBM, Escotel, Blue Star, and Hewlett-Packard. She's a recipient of several awards, including HR Leadership Awards at World HRD Congress, and she was also named as a Women Superachiever Award and is listed as one of the most powerful HR professionals in India at the Asia Pacific HRD Congress in July 2010 at Singapore. Very, very impressive. Rachna's personal philosophy is like this: you decide what is good for you. Don't worry about the rest of the world. Stay the course. And in some sense, at heart she believes she's a Karam Yogi. Do your duty. Do what you think is right, but just keep the pace and keep the direction. What she likes to do, she likes to relate to people, understand the person, spends lots of time with people. What is not really known about Rachna is that she started life as an engineer, stayed out of BITS Pilani, and worked as a person in the electronics function and then moved her career. What's also known, this is the one that I worry a little bit about you, Rachna, is that she's a mimicry expert. And my concern is that she would start to mimic some of us on this thing. So Rachna, go easy on that. With this, let me turn this over to you. And I have a question. The question for you, Rachna, is we often hear that the skills gap and building futuristic skills are important. And we have a demographic dividend that can play in our favor, given that India has the youngest population, at least till the year 2039. Today's workforce is young, seek flexibility and growth, and they want growth soonest. If it can happen yesterday, even better. Given your rich experience across multiple industries such as IT, telecom, energy, power, could you throw some light on how workforce capability has evolved in different industries and how do we manage that expectation? Over to you, Rachna.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. for a very, very detailed introduction. Don't worry, I will not imitate you at the end of this. So, yes, as we've been speaking, across different industries and across different organizations, it's a very interesting question on, do capabilities have to be different or have to be similar or have to be same? Can you cross-fertilize talent? Can you not? So as I see it, I think some capabilities are very specific, which are more like skills. Some capabilities are very functional, and they are definitely different. So IT, you would have the high-end engineers working on platforms, and that's a specific skill and a capability which is needed. Telecom, you have this very specific capability of usage and revenue within marketing. You don't have it in many other industries. You may have it in credit card industry, for example. In energy, you have these solution architects, energy and power, who need to go around building solutions and products across. And these are very specific type of capabilities and skills, but largely specific to the job and functional. However, when we look at leadership capability, managerial capability, and when we look at aspects of people management, I don't think that changes across organizations. And I think one of the challenges and one of the interesting aspects is when you want to hire for a particular role, the struggle is, are you going to look at the potential? Are you going to look at the aspiration, motivation, or are you going to get closed and clogged within the same industry, same experience? So that definitely across industries, some things remain the same. And it's interesting that you talk about the young workforce. I think there's a lot of talk today about the young workforce that India has, and in the next 20, 30 years is going to be a big strength. I think workforces and organizations need to realize and work in the direction of utilizing the energy out of the younger lot. The younger lot, the Gen Y, which were just probably getting groomed, have now entered the initial part of the organizations and organizational culture. But I think they bring a lot of clarity and a lot of risk-taking with them. The number of people who come up and say that they would leave a job which is high-paying but doesn't give them the kick is not very less. So that is one type of talent that you already have. And then workforces have to look at, organizations have to look at workforce which is across different categories, senior lot of employees. So how do we develop people across these three generations, I would say, and how do you keep them engaged and trained and capable is what is the big question that organizations need to be looking at. I think the digital natives who are the youngsters, a lot of social media, flexibility, remote working, those are the skills, the skills which were existing yesterday are required, but some of these skills have got added. So managers need to develop the skill of handling workforces like this and having to learn how to manage remote workforces and teams as well. And, in every industry you would have different. So, for example, if an organization goes through a transformation on business model, one of the things we've had to do is change our businesses and position them differently, and which has necessitated very, very different capabilities for people. Because if they were looking at one product and selling it, now they have to look at many products and sell it. So some people become from specialist to generalist. Some employees have to become more specialist than they were. And continuous learning across such changes is one of the aspects that organizations need to continue to look at. In telecom, I remember not only that the employees in the organization needed to be focused on in terms of capability building, but you had such a large franchisee workforce and associated workforce that if you could not train them for the skills and imbibe them into the organization, show them a career path, it would not work out. However, I think what is interesting is that across various levels of management, organizations tend to focus a lot at the entry level and a lot when it is time for senior leaders to emerge. And somewhere, the middle management development, either internally or by infusion externally of talent, gets a little limited. So if that is one area that's focused on and a wider pipe reaches the top, that's one capability building. And then capability building across experience and a little bit of mentoring and coaching is one aspect of it. However, you know, what is interesting is also that somebody who joins an organization and you say that this person in 2 years will take on this role, finally for the 5 years is 2 years away. And so what are we doing in terms of experiences of roles that will make them gain it? If somebody needs to have a P&L capability, they need that responsibility and no other way of learning it. So those are some of the things which I think become very, very important. However, I think one thing which is very important is this quote that you must always remember that you are absolutely unique. And it applies to everybody. So that is the challenge of workforce capability building today, that everybody is unique, everybody needs a different style to be developed, to be learned, to use learning for, and organizations need to be catering to that. And that would be my take on it. Thanks.
Rachna, thank you so much. I now have the pleasure to introduce Uma. Uma is from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, with undergraduate degrees in economics and law. She's also a certified executive coach. She started her career with Blue Star. She's been a business leader. She joined Signode in 1991 in the corporate communications and then moved to a profit center where she took over as the Chief Human Resources Officer of Signode India and Middle East, and led the development and implementation of Signode India's significant advancement in talent and career development, and has worked with many global leaders to establish businesses and hire key leaders in India and other countries. Under her leadership, Signode India has achieved the SAIL HR Excellence Award in 2009 and NHRD Hyderabad Inspire Award for Innovation in 2011. Very well done, Uma. Currently, she's the Director HR for Signode Asia Pac and the NEA region, and in this role, she provides leadership and support. She's authored several articles on flexible employment practices. She's been the Vice President of NHRD Hyderabad, and she's the convener of CII's Indian Women Network AP from 2013 to 14, and is currently the convener of CII Telangana's Human Resources and Industrial Relations Panel 14-15. Uma's personal philosophy is to be the best. I like that. To be the best. What she loves? She's a socialist at heart. So she really believes in the equality. She believes that there should not be a big divide between the rich and the poor. She really believes in that. She does a lot of work. What is not very well known is that something that she learned today is that Rachna, when she turned up as a graduate engineer, the training manager at Blue Star was Uma. So that was very interesting, but it's not very well known. What is also not very well known is the fact that she's a lot into mythology. She knows Sanskrit, so she's currently translating a number of Sanskrit works into English. She's also trying to transliterate that. She also says, I'm trying to do the same thing for Telugu literature, but she says it's a lot more difficult than Sanskrit. So I have some question for you, Uma. You have been in the industry which supports manufacturing and seen the patterns of industries across several countries, and therefore, given your responsibilities, you have witnessed several transformations. Question is, what innovations have you witnessed that have successfully met the challenges of enhancing the capabilities and multi-generational workforce? What are your insights?
Thanks, Nathan, for the nice introduction. It was really a pleasure meeting you, Rachna. It's wonderful. Good evening to everybody. So, I represent, I really am very proud that I represent the manufacturing industry, and I speak for the manufacturing industry. So when Nathan told me that his line of questioning was going to be this, so first I said to myself, do we really have a multi-generational workforce? Or do we really only have, the Gen X and maybe the baby boomers and not the Gen Y in our organizations? So I think the challenge is right from attracting the talent to our industry is the challenge. It's a serious challenge. But having said that, I would also talk about the workforce, slightly broadening the question. I would also say that this workforce that we have today is not only multi-generational, but it is highly diverse. And I'm not only talking about gender diversity, but I'm really talking about the socio-economic diversity that we see at the workplace. Things that you and I firmly put myself in the baby boomers generation, took for granted, are not even understood as basic requirements by the workforce that comes in today. And likewise, things that are considered very important by Gen Y are perhaps not even in our horizon and radar at any point in time. So I think it's a broader question, the question of having a very diverse workforce. And the paradox is, because, as the professor very eminently pointed out, we have the demography in our favor, but we are also seeing that people are working longer. So at any point in time, all of us, and the ITES be prepared for it too, we're going to have at least 4 generations at a workplace. Now, if you have 4 generations of people at the workplace, then you really cannot gear yourself to any one particular generation. I think to say that Gen Y is different is probably the baby boomers said the same to Gen X, and probably the earlier generation said the same to the Gen Y. It's about adaptability. And therefore, when we talk about transformative interventions, whether in, and I speak from my experience not only in India, but in situations where we acquired companies in Africa, or we work with our colleagues in Asia, or even in very developed markets like Australia, I think the key that we work on is enterprise contribution. I think at some level, workforce capability is very, very strongly linked to enterprise capability. So if the enterprise stands for a certain standard, if you like, depending on how the enterprise sets its bar, I think so the workforce capability will follow. So the leadership challenge is about enterprise capability benchmarking or setting the bar. And then after that, all the other investments are very easy to come forth. So I would tend to say that the transformations occur in workforce capability building. And I agree that these are not gradual, these are more like steps. And they're very closely linked to certain other flex points in the organizational life. When the organization decides that its enterprise capability needs to be enhanced to survive or even to grow in the markets that it operates in, workforce capability will follow. The issue around the multi-generational workforce is to recognize that each one of us is actually marching to a different drummer's tune, and how can you personalize this enterprise capability experience building into each individual's what's in it for me equation. I think the organizations which are able to synthesize this are the ones who are really successful in this task.
Thank you for your opening comments, Uma. Thank you very much. I now have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Narendra Kothari, presently the CMD of NMDC Limited, a Navaratna public sector enterprise, Ministry of Steel, Government of India. Mr. Kothari has done his metallurgical engineering from the prestigious Malviya Regional Engineering College, Jaipur, and then he started his career with SAIL at Durgapur Steel Plant. He's been in the steel industry for several years. He was elevated as the Chief Executive Officer of ISCO Steel Plant, Burnpur. He has a wide spectrum of experience in the fields of plant management, project execution, vigilance, company matters of business and administration. He's brought a lot of accolades to the organization through his able leadership qualities and administrative skills. Mr. Kothari has traveled to several countries, both in Europe and other places in the course of carrying out his various responsibilities. He's also visited Australia, South Africa, Mozambique, and of course the US of A. He's been bestowed with the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Green Tech Foundation for his contribution to the mining and steel industry. As always, a little bit about Mr. Kothari. His personal philosophy is growth depends on knowledge. Growth depends on knowledge. So he says, that's my philosophy. I gather as much knowledge as you should. He also believes that both an individual and an organization must prosper. It's just not one at the cost of the other. Both of them must do that. He believes in very hard work. And maybe that's the reason, sir, that you ultimately reach the pinnacle of your career. What he loves doing, he loves to meet his near and dear ones. That's what he truly loves. What is not known about him is his keen interest in astronomy. He reads about it 19 to the dozen. We have a very, very interesting gentleman in Mr. Kothari. I have a question for you, sir. So, given that you have had diverse experience, and as the CMD led from the front of several transformations in the steel industry, you have a knack of building capabilities. You have a knack of training, motivating people in an industry which is a difficult industry. Steel is not an easy industry to be in. Can you provide your thoughts on what the private sector can really learn from the leading light of PSUs in their ability to focus on workforce capability and deployment? Over to you, Mr. Kothari.